That was never offside, ref. I was level with the last defender. We have to talk about this.
The stadium was shaking. 100,000 people were screaming at the same time. El Clásico, the biggest match in the world. Barcelona versus Real Madrid. And in the 64th minute, something happened that had never happened before in the history of this fixture. Something that the television cameras caught but nobody could explain. Something that made Ronaldinho stop walking toward the ball and stand completely still in the center of the field, with his hand pressed against his chest, like a man who has just been told something that changes everything. The referee had called a foul. The video assistant referee review was underway. The screen on the side of the pitch lit up the way it always does during those moments. But this time, before the referee could walk over to review the footage, a message appeared on that screen that had nothing to do with the match. 4 words, just 4 words. And when Ronaldinho turned his head and read them, something inside him broke open in front of 100,000 people. What were those 4 words? Who put them there? And why did Ronaldinho sit down on the grass in the middle of El Clásico and cover his face with both hands while both teams waited and the entire stadium fell into a silence so deep you could hear the wind moving through the upper tiers? To understand what happened in that moment, we need to go back exactly 96 hours, 4 days before the match. And we need to start not in a stadium, not in a training facility, not in any place that has anything to do with professional soccer. We need to start in a children's hospital on the outskirts of the city. Room 14, 3rd floor. The floor where the windows face the park and the nurses speak in low voices because they have learned over many years that in this particular wing of this particular building, the energy you bring into a room matters more than anything written on a chart. His name was Diego. He was 11 years old. He had a heart condition called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, which is a disease where the walls of the heart grow too thick and the muscle that is supposed to pump blood through the body slowly loses its ability to do the job it was built to do. Diego had been diagnosed at age 7. He had spent more of his life inside hospitals than outside of them. He had missed birthday parties. He had missed school field trips. He had missed the first snowfall of 2 consecutive winters because the cold air was too much of a risk. But there was one thing Diego had never missed, not once in 4 years of illness, not once even on the worst nights when the monitors beside his bed beeped in patterns that made the nurses exchange quiet looks over his head. He had never missed a Ronaldinho match, not on television, not on the small screen that the hospital allowed him to keep in his room, not even during the stretches when the medication made him too tired to sit up. When he would lie flat on his back and listen to the commentary with his eyes closed and a small smile on his face that his mother, Rosa, said was the most honest expression of happiness she had ever seen on another human being. Rosa was 42 years old. She worked as a school cafeteria supervisor during the hours when Diego was stable enough not to need her at the hospital. She was a small woman with dark circles under her eyes that had been there for so long, they no longer registered as unusual to anyone who knew her. She did not complain. She had made a decision very early in Diego's illness that she was not going to let him see her grieve because she believed, with the kind of quiet certainty that only comes from having no other choice, that the moment he saw her stop hoping was the moment he would stop fighting. 3 months before El Clásico, the doctors had called Rosa into a conference room. They spoke to her in the careful, measured way that doctors speak when they have run out of options, and the only thing left to manage is the transition. They told her that Diego's condition had progressed beyond what the available treatments could address. They told her they would keep him comfortable. They told her they would monitor him closely. And then one of them said something that Rosa would repeat to herself every night for the next several weeks. He said that in his experience, patients like Diego, young patients with strong reasons to stay present, often found ways to extend beyond what the medical data suggested was possible. He could not explain it medically, but he had seen it enough times that he no longer tried to. Rosa drove home that night and sat in her car in the parking garage for 40 minutes before going inside. And then she went to Diego's room, where he was watching a replay of a Ronaldinho assist from 2 seasons back, and she sat on the edge of his bed and asked him what he wanted more than anything in the world. Diego did not hesitate. He said he wanted to watch Ronaldinho play in El Clásico, not on television, in the stadium, sitting close enough to see his face. Rosa had written letters before, to foundations, to charities, to the club's official public relations department. So she had gotten back form responses, polite and warm and completely useless. She had tried calling. She had tried reaching out through mutual connections, through a neighbor who worked in sports media, through a friend of a friend who claimed to know someone who managed a player's schedule. Nothing had come through. 4 days before the match, she was sitting in the hospital cafeteria at 7 in the morning drinking coffee that had been sitting in the pot for too long when a man sat down across from her. She had seen him before. He worked at the stadium. She had met him once at a community event and remembered vaguely that he had something to do with the technical operations of the facility. His name was Marcos. He was 61 years old, a widower, so a man who had spent 34 years maintaining the broadcast infrastructure of the stadium, the wiring systems, the display screens, the technical equipment that made the modern soccer experience what it was. He had heard about Diego from a mutual acquaintance. He had come to find Rosa specifically. He sat down, wrapped his hands around his own cup of bad coffee, and said he wanted to help. Not through official channels, not through forms or requests or approvals. He wanted to help the way ordinary people help each other, which is directly and without waiting for permission from institutions that were never designed to move quickly enough for the situations that actually matter. Marcos explained that his nephew worked in the video assistant referee system as a technical operator. One of the engineers responsible for the screens and displays used during match reviews. He could not get Diego into the stadium. The medical risk was too high, and the logistics were genuinely impossible on 4 days' notice. But he had an idea. A small idea. An idea that was technically a violation of about 4 different protocols and would almost certainly end with some kind of formal reprimand if anyone found out. He wanted to put a message on the video assistant referee screen during the match, not during the actual review footage, just before it. In the 2 or 3 seconds between the system activating and the referee walking over. A moment when the screen was visible to everyone in the stadium, when the cameras were pointing at it, when even the players on the field would be able to read whatever was displayed there. His nephew could do it. He knew exactly how. It would take less than 2 seconds to execute and would require nothing more than a small text overlay programmed into the secondary display queue. Rosa looked at this man she barely knew and felt something she had not felt in a very long time. She felt like the world was not entirely indifferent after all. She asked what the message would say. Marcos said he thought Rosa should decide that. It should be her words. It should say what Diego needed Ronaldinho to know. Rosa thought about it for a long time. She thought about everything Diego had said over 4 years of illness, every conversation they had shared in that small hospital room with the window facing the park. Oh, she thought about the way his face changed when Ronaldinho touched the ball, the way he would lean forward slightly without realizing he was doing it, the way he sometimes forgot he was sick entirely when the game was close. And then she wrote 4 words on a paper napkin and slid it across the table to Marcos. Diego is watching tonight. That was it. 4 words. No last name, no explanation, no plea for acknowledgement or response. Just the truth, offered plainly, the way the most important things usually are. Marcos folded the napkin and put it in his shirt pocket and said he would take care of it. The night of El Clásico arrived the way those nights always do, with an energy that seems to belong to the city itself rather than to any individual match. Rosa had brought a small television into Diego's room. She had gotten special permission from the night nursing staff to let him stay up past his usual hour. Diego was wearing a Barcelona jersey that was 2 sizes too big, the number 10 on the back written in the blue and red that he had loved since before he could fully articulate why. He was propped up against 3 pillows. His oxygen levels were stable. His heart rate was elevated, but his doctor had noted on the chart that morning that Diego appeared, in every measurable and unmeasurable sense, more alive than he had in weeks. The match began at 9 in the evening. Barcelona dominated the early exchanges. Real Madrid responded with a counter-attacking structure that kept the midfield compressed. Ronaldinho was everywhere, as he always was in these matches, arriving in spaces that should not have existed, turning defenders with movements that seemed to belong to a different sport entirely. By the 55th minute, the score was tied at 1 goal each. The tension inside the stadium was the kind that makes ordinary people do extraordinary things simply because they find themselves inside an atmosphere that demands it. In minute 64, a Real Madrid midfielder went into a challenge just inside the Barcelona penalty area. The referee immediately signaled for a video assistant referee review, standard procedure. The stadium settled into the familiar anticipatory quiet of a video assistant referee moment. The screen on the side of the pitch activated, and for approximately 2.5 seconds before the review footage appeared, a line of text was displayed in white letters against the dark background of the screen. Diego is watching tonight. Nobody in the press box understood what it meant. The television commentators paused mid-sentence. The referee, who was already walking toward the screen to view the footage, I stopped and read the words, and then looked around as if he expected someone to explain them. The players on both teams looked up at the screen, because that is what you do when a screen lights up in front of you, and they read the words, and most of them went back to watching the referee. But Ronaldinho did not go back to watching the referee. He stood perfectly still in the middle of the field, with his hand pressed against his chest, and read those 4 words. And something in his expression changed in a way that the cameras captured clearly, even from a distance. His eyes did not move from the screen. For the full 2.5 seconds that the message was visible. And then the footage appeared, and the message was gone, and the referee reviewed the contact and waved play on, and the match continued. But Ronaldinho stood where he was for a moment longer than everyone else. And then he looked up at the stadium. Oh, at all 100,000 people filling every section of that enormous structure. And the look on his face was not the look of a man trying to identify a specific person in a crowd. It was the look of a man who has just understood something he did not understand before. A man who has been reminded of something he already knew, but had allowed the noise of professional sport to temporarily obscure. He played the next 26 minutes of that match differently than he had played the first 64. He played with a quality of presence that his teammates noticed and his opponents felt, and the commentators tried to describe with words that kept falling slightly short of what they were trying to say. He played as if every touch of the ball was dedicated to something, as if the game itself had transformed from a competition into a kind of offering. In the 79th minute, Nati received the ball wide on the left side, 30 meters from goal, with 2 defenders closing him down. He did something with his right foot that made both defenders commit in the wrong direction simultaneously, and then he hit a shot with the outside of his left foot that curved impossibly into the far corner of the net. The stadium exploded. His teammates ran toward him, and Ronaldinho jogged to the corner flag, pointed at the sky with both hands, and mouthed 2 words that the lip readers and commentators and social media analyzers would spend the following 48 hours trying to confirm. For Diego. Barcelona won the match 3-1. In the locker room afterward, Ronaldinho asked one of the team's operations staff to find out who Diego was. He asked quietly, without making a scene, without drawing attention to the question. He said there had been a message on the video assistant referee screen, and he needed to know the story behind it. It took less than an hour for the answer to make its way back to him through the network of people who work in and around a stadium on match night. By midnight, he knew about Diego. He knew about room 14. He knew about the jersey that was 2 sizes too big. He knew about 4 years of watching games from a hospital bed and never once missing a Ronaldinho match. He showed up at the hospital the following morning. No cameras, no publicist, no security detail. Just him, a backpack, and the jersey he had worn during the match, still carrying the faint smell of the grass from the night before. He asked at the front desk for Diego's room number, and when the nurse on duty recognized him and started to react, he put his finger to his lips and asked her very politely to let him surprise the kid. Diego was awake. Rosa was sitting in the chair beside the bed. The door opened, and Rosa saw who it was before Diego did, and the expression on her face in that moment is the kind of expression that people who were there to witness it will spend years trying to adequately describe. Diego turned his head. The thing about moments like this is that they resist storytelling. Language is built to approximate human experience, but there are categories of feeling that simply exceed what sentences can hold. Or what happened in that room when an 11-year-old boy with a failing heart looked up from his pillow and saw Ronaldinho standing in the doorway holding a signed jersey and smiling that smile. The one that seemed to carry inside it some fundamental understanding of what life was for. That thing that happened cannot be fully translated into words. It can only be pointed at from a respectful distance and acknowledged. Ronaldinho stayed for 3 hours. He sat on the edge of Diego's bed, and they talked about soccer the way two people talk when one of them knows everything and the other one knows everything too, just from a different angle. They talked about specific matches, about specific moments, about the geometry of certain goals that only someone who had truly watched and truly loved would remember in the detail they both remembered them. Rosa sat in her chair and watched her son be completely himself, without the overlay of illness, without the weight of all those months of being defined by what his body could not do. Before he left, Ronaldinho wrote something on the inside of the jersey collar, in a spot that would be hidden when the jersey was worn. Something that only Diego would ever see. Something private between the two of them. Rosa asked Diego later what it said, and Diego told her he would tell her someday, but that for now it was his. And Rosa, you who understood better than most people the importance of having something that belongs only to you, said that was completely fine. Diego wore that jersey every day for the next 6 months. He wore it over his hospital clothes. He wore it to every appointment. He wore it on the afternoon of his 11th birthday, which his doctors had privately not been certain he would reach. His condition did not improve in any dramatic or medically explainable way, but he stayed. He kept choosing to stay. Ronaldinho visited twice more before the end of that season, each time with no announcement, no documentation, nothing that would transform the visit into a story about Ronaldinho rather than a visit between two people who had come to mean something to each other. He sent messages through Rosa on weeks when the schedule made travel impossible. He remembered the dates that mattered, the anniversaries of diagnoses and surgeries, and the small victories that only a family fighting that particular fight would think to track. Diego died in the spring, 7 months after El Clásico. He died on a Sunday morning with Rosa beside him, wearing the jersey with the message on the inside of the collar. His heart, which had fought longer and harder than anyone had given it credit for, finally rested. He was 11 years old, and he had spent 4 years of his life choosing soccer over fear and love over despair, and he had made a world-famous man stop in the middle of the biggest game of the year and remember what everything was actually for. Marcos, the stadium technician who had arranged the message, was formally reprimanded by the facility's technical oversight committee for the unauthorized use of the video assistant referee display system. He received a written warning and a 3-week suspension from certain operational duties. He framed the written warning and hung it on the wall of his apartment above a photograph that Rosa sent him the following week. The photograph shows Diego holding up the signed jersey with both hands, grinning with his entire face, looking for all the world like a person who has just received the only thing he ever really needed. Ronaldinho has been asked in interviews many times about that match, about the message, about what he did afterward. He deflects most of the questions with characteristic warmth and a change of subject. But in one interview, given to a journalist in the years following his retirement from professional soccer, he said something that the journalist wrote down carefully because it seemed to contain something worth preserving. He said that in his entire career, across all the matches and all the goals and all the moments that people remember and replay. The truest thing that ever happened to him on a soccer field happened in those 2.5 seconds when he read 4 words on a screen and understood, in a way that needed no further explanation, that someone who would never be able to stand in that stadium was standing there anyway. He said soccer is a game about movement, about always moving toward something. And he said that sometimes the most important thing you can move toward is not the ball. There are moments in sports that statistics cannot hold and highlights cannot contain. Diego never made it into a stadium. He never saw Ronaldinho play in person the way he dreamed of. But for 7 months, he wore a jersey with a private message inside the collar, and he knew that one of the greatest players who ever lived had walked into his room. Not because a publicist arranged it, but because a message on a screen had made it impossible to do anything else. That is what sports can be. At its absolute best, not a game, a reason to stay. If this story moved you, hit the like button right now and subscribe so you never miss another one of these. Stories like Diego's deserve to be seen by millions of people. Every time you share this video, you make sure that someone, somewhere, hears his name. That matters more than any algorithm. Drop a comment below and tell me what part of this story hit you the hardest. I read every single one.